All right. Welcome to People's First with Alex Bowden, the podcast. We're talking about hiring, leadership, culture, and the way actual works. Alex Bowden, the co-founder and CEO of People First, and she has spent a career helping organizations find, develop, and retain talent that need to grow. On the show, we're having a real conversation with leaders who care about building strong teams, better employees' experiences, a smarter hiring system, and we are ready to move on beyond just checklists, creating workspaces where great people choose to stay, where the right places to be. Today's episode is about the hiring topics and what will work, and we will be getting into the challenges. So let's get started. Alex, welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Derek.
Go ahead and give us a little background on how you got to this point. How did you all become co-founder of People First, and how did that all come about for you?
Sure. So I have a little bit of a unique background. I actually started as a professional dancer, and I was living in New York. Yeah, very different, right? I was living in New York City, and I was tired of being a broke, starving artist and working 15, 16-hour days and multiple jobs. So I just burned out, and I was ready for something different. Knew I wanted to have a family in the future. I wanted more stability for that. So I chose to follow someone I was dating at the time to Cincinnati, Ohio, and at that point I went through what I call my quarter life crisis. I was 25. I was completely paralyzed with what do I do now? Who's going to hire me with a fancy dance degree? And I didn't have the money to go back to school. I was paying an insane amount on loans for my school already. So I just really felt kind of paralyzed with how to move forward. And so that was a formative moment for me. I ended up falling backwards into HR. I was hired by a marketing firm to support their VP as the executive assistant, and then very early on they realized that I had hiring and interviewing experience from working at various nonprofits around New York City and Baltimore City, where I'm from. And so they're like, oh, well, why don't you help with the recruiting committee? So I usually am someone that says yes, so I was like, okay, let's try. I actually really liked it. I got really good at it, and within a year they asked me to move into that full time. So what I did during my about 4.5 years there was build out an entire system and infrastructure for more accurate hiring and retention. That include things from employee resource groups for diverse retention, things like training all levels of leadership on how to interview and select talent strategically, on how to find talent in unique places, on an entire revamp of how we looked at an ideal profile. So I worked with IO psychologists and a testing tool to define an ideal candidate profile for the main role that we were most often hiring for. And the amount of time it saved, the amount of cost it saved in turnover, in recruiting fees was incredible. So when I left, I started People First. I wanted more flexibility with my young son, and I wanted to be able to do this for other organizations that were growing, where they could really use that cost savings, that time back in their day. So that's what started People First. And then I met my colleague and fellow owner, Will, along the way. He's been amazing. He had his own recruiting company as well, and then we joined forces about 4 years ago now, and have evolved People First into what it is today. So
Very nice. So you were talking about how to build retention strategies. How does that kind of start before the offer letter?
yeah, it's in the entire process. So most people don't think about how to hire intentionally and strategically, and how to lay the groundwork before they need to hire. It's because we're busy. We're caught up in the day-to-day, right? Especially SMBs, which is who we predominantly serve. They're spread really thin. They don't have a lot of resources or huge internal teams. So it's kind of like the last minute, oh shoot, we need to hire someone because someone quit, or, they've had a growth spurt and they need to fill these roles. And so it's done reactively. And then what ends up happening is a lot of time wasted, a lot of money wasted. So prior to even thinking about hiring, what we focus on with clients is helping them understand what is the culture that we're trying to achieve in this organization. Like, where are we now and where do we want to be aspirationally?
Correct.
And what that means, because that can sound very abstract, is what are these actual behaviors that we want to see on a day-to-day basis, with the way people interact with teammates, with the way they interact with your clients, with the way they interact when nobody's looking, right? Like, what are these actual behaviors? And we get very specific about that, because that is what makes up a culture. And so, there are core things that we want to hire on based on, someone being a good person and having the right characters and attributes. And then there's the technical and skills component we want to hire for. And then there's the cultural piece, which is just as important. So from there, we start to help cut down on the process itself, because we develop what we call, they're almost like marketing materials. We call it a job invitation, and it's an invitation for people to apply, and it's a very transparent, authentic look at what they were doing day to day, what the culture's like, and it's not just to get a bunch of people to apply. It's not touting all the positive. It's also talking about the negatives, right? This is not for you because we want people to self-select. And so what we found through that is when you do that well, and you're clear on your employer brand, and you're setting up this, recurring process that's very clear with candidates from the beginning, people self-select out that are not meant to be there. And so a lot of hiring managers panic because they feel like, doing it well means a bulk of applicants, and it's not. Instead, they get a much more curated funnel of candidates that want to be there, that have the skills required, and are not afraid of, the pros and the cons of what they're walking into. So that level of transparency, and then we customize how we interview people, what we ask, and what we're listening for based on those roles and those cultural behaviors as well. So everything becomes a customized system, and it's a repeatable system. That way it cuts down on the time, the effort, the cost it takes to hire each person, because now we have an engine that's running, and any future role or person you want to fill that role moving forward, it's already built out and ready to go.
When you're saying that people are eliminating themselves based on the questions that they're answering, do you feel like that is always the case? Or do you feel like some of them are desperate for a job and will say anything to get the job? And how are you able to kind of find those people, or is there a way to find those people, or do we not figure it out until we get to the end and then it's too late? I mean, I understand, with the market the way it is right now, and everybody binding for the jobs, and you have all of these people that,
Sure.
they'll pretty much say anything to get a job.
Sure.
That's the hard part that I see is, you have abundance of people, and pretty much now they'll just say or do whatever they can. So is there kind of a way are y'all interviewing them as well, on top of them answering the questions, or is the manager doing that part? How does it kind of play out?
Yeah, so of course, there's people that are going to apply because they just want a job. And so we find it pretty effective maybe 70% of the time, right? But ultimately, you still need to put them through a rigorous interview process. And so that's where those customized interview materials and questions become very helpful, because we have multiple rounds of screening. We actually do our biggest screening up front. We want to cut down on how many people get through. So many times, a recruiter might have a 5, 10, 15-minute conversation with a candidate, and they pass them along. And we actually do the opposite. We will spend like an hour with a candidate, and we're taking them through the whole rigmarole of let me make sure and vet them from every direction that they're the right fit. And we're having very honest conversations. We're not pressuring them. We're saying hey, this is the pro, this is the con. How do you feel about that? Is that the right fit for you? Because we don't win if you don't win, right? If you are not a good fit and leave, that's not success for us. So that's how we build such strong rapport with our clients and trust, is because they know that we're going to spend the time and do our due diligence of screening people for actual fit, and not just put a butt in the seat. And then additionally, We also try to train our hiring managers and customize their interview materials as well. So,
Right.
hey, this is what you're listening for. This is what you want to ask. These are the follow-up questions based on how they might respond. And any red flag you have, dig into it. Don't leave any question unanswered, right? So we're training them on how to do this effectively as well, because many times they don't have the practice, right? They may hire once, twice a year. You can't get really good at something only doing it once or twice a year. So
Right.
we try to really look at it, the whole process, holistic. And then we also work with the onboarding, right? How are you onboarding them? How are you getting them up to speed? How are you communicating your expectations clearly so we're setting them up with success? Because hiring them is just half the battle. You could have a great candidate you get through, and then if you're not setting them up for success, they're crashing and burning, right? Or you're frustrated. So all of those pieces, we look at it as like an entire life cycle, and we're helping with each stage of that journey to make sure that everyone's set up for success.
Okay. Now, I also have seen that you have career transition assistance. So is that meaning that you're taking the people back and transitioning to another company, or are you just staying in contact with them, or is the focus to train the management on that aspect of it, of career transition and moving them up, or how does that all work?
It's a great question. So yes, we do stay in contact with people we place. For example, I placed someone at a client 6 years ago who's become a friend, and now she's hiring at her new job 6 years later, and she called me. So yes, we stay in contact, and if they're not happy, we try to help find them someplace else. But when we look at career transition, we're looking at it from a broader lens of whomever needs help changing jobs. We have an entire methodology that I've built. So I said my background was dancing, but my degree is actually in dance and education. So when it comes to building exercises and building kind of competencies, awareness, understanding over time, that's really fun for me. So about 8 years ago, I started building a methodology, having been through it myself, that paralyzing, fear of like, well, who's going to hire me? How do I translate my skills? That's where this comes in. So I wanted to help people through that transition. And since then, I actually have worked with a lot of professional athletes, for example, where the same thing, they devote their whole life to this one thing, and then it's like, well, how do I get something else, and where do I go,
Right.
So what I learned through that process is that we have these core competencies that make us us. And whether it's performing on a stage or speaking in front of a room or facilitating a class and keeping people engaged, a lot of those competencies can translate. And so it's really getting people to boil things down from a job title or skills or experience into what are these core competencies and how can you articulate them in a way that shows people that they can translate to something else. So I have an entire methodology that I've built. I've worked with professionals, 34 years in their career. I've worked with college students through NKU extensively over the years and refined it. And so I take people through it, or I have taken them through it one-on-one as a career coach over the years. But now what we've actually done is we've taken that methodology, we've put it online. So there's a course that we've sent people through that's built for university programs for their students that are graduating and don't really know how to land a job, or how to articulate what they want, what they need, what they don't want. And then we're also building a platform right now that's a little more interactive and it's kind of condensed for professionals. So for them to go through and be guided through this process in really bite-sized pieces that are, allow them to kind of gain these insights over time without feeling overburdened in their life and everything they have to do. And then we take our skills, having been recruiters, we're hiring managers, we've sat on both sides of the table, and we then teach them how to do the tactical elements. So we help them refine their career identity DNA first. Who am I? What can I offer? What do I want? What do I not want? What's important to me? And then it's like, okay, now you're ready to look for a job. And here are the tactical skills that you need. Here's how a resume should be formatted. This is how you should leverage LinkedIn. This is how you should present yourself and have a networking strategy, right? So all of that is how we serve people in transition.
Oh, okay. So you definitely have taken a lot of what you've learned and put it into a core competency that really will help them develop themselves. I did the same thing when I was in Austin working with different companies because we weren't able to find a lot of people during the boom and everything. And I went to the University of Texas and did a presentation and said, hey, this is what you need to do to be able to come on board and stay in touch with me, and we can get you through the process and everything. So I'm glad to hear that someone else was out there educating them and getting in to work with the university students and saying, hey, this is what we can do. This is how we can help each other, because it'll be beneficial to both of us, because I'll have jobs for you and I'll know your background and so forth. And so it works really well, and I think that's a very positive thing that he'll have put together. And as you talked about your live coaching sessions and things like that, that's very valuable for people nowadays to have someone to talk to, or like you said, be able to get their core competencies that they have that they don't know that they have, and you bring that out for them. So I think that's a great thing that y'all have done and put together from what I've seen from your website. That has been very important to have people go to it and use it. And having a professional networking community, those type of things, really helps people be able to talk to peers and communicate with them very well.
It's so important, right? Everything we do is research backed. It's how people succeed in a role. It's how people succeed in their job search. And many times it's not the tactic elements. It's support, accountability, networking, community, and clarity. Clarity on what they want and don't want and what they have to offer.
Exactly. Moving on to what is the industry insights and trends that you're seeing at this point in time that people need to be kind of aware of from both sides, from a individual that's looking for work or transitioning from work, or even someone that is a manager that's going to hire somebody? What kind of things that you've seen in the market and trends that are changing and strategies that could help each other?
Yeah. So I would be remiss not to talk about AI here, right? Because it's
well, that was going to be the next question.
Right? Yeah,
we were heading there.
Yeah, that really is the market right now. That is disrupting the market in so many ways. Not only because it's evolving so quickly that companies are trying to, in addition to the economy, they're also looking at AI, and they're holding back on hiring because they're like, well, we don't really know what we need to hire. Like, can we delegate some of this stuff to AI? Can we not? What does this look like for us in terms of workforce planning? So it really is stalling the market in terms of hiring. Now, in the future, in my crystal ball, right, I imagine that hiring managers are going to swing maybe too far in the direction of relying on AI to do some of these processes. I don't know about you, but almost every hiring manager I've talked to hates hiring. So I imagine they would try to delegate as much of this to AI as they can, and that's going to be a mistake. It's just not ready for that. It's very black or white. If you use, let's take a look at LinkedIn, right? If you've posted on LinkedIn and you've used their hiring AI tool, this is LinkedIn. They've got billions of dollars of budget to pour into this. Cutting edge technology, and what it turns back is like, it cherry picked a couple things and it totally missed all the nuance. So that is where great hiring lives. That's where great interviewing lives. It lives in the nuance, and humans can understand those nuances. Computers, at least at this time or the near future, cannot. So I would caution hiring managers from leveraging AI too much in their hiring process. And really keep that human-centered. Now, for job seekers, same thing, right? Like, you need to be able to adapt your skills and talk about your strengths in a way that's not glued to a particular role or title. And so this goes on both sides of the coin. And this is why what we're building feels so kismet and timing. The timing is so perfect because these job titles are already becoming obsolete. Some of these entry-level marketing roles, or these entry-level roles that can be delegated to AI, or whether they can or not, people are delegating to AI. These students are coming out of college and not having jobs anymore based on what they had intended to pursue. And that's going to continue to trickle into more entry level roles, mid level roles. So, or they're going to be condensed. And so now more than ever, it's going to be really imperative that both from the hiring manager perspective and the candidate perspective or job seeker perspective, you are taking 10 steps back and looking at what are my transferable skills and strengths, and how do I talk about them without tying them to experience or a role, because that role may not exist anymore. But I need to know how it translates, and I need to know how I'm still going to solve their problem, maybe in an entirely different industry or entirely different job category. So that's going to be important, and we've known that for years. The research has been there. This is not new information that this is how we should hire. It's just not how we're so used to hiring a particular way, it's never been changed. And so AI is really, I think, going to force our hand in doing that. It may end up being a positive.
Yes, and recently I've heard on the news that people have just thought that AI was going to take over all of these positions and just got rid of all these people, and they're like, "Oops, let's bring them back because we need them. We can't put everything on the table and think it's going to get done that way." So again, people are really learning that AI is to assist people. It's not to, and especially in the recruiting, staffing part of it, it's very important. It's still something that is very human based, and has to be talked about. You have to really feel out the person, because like you said, with the LinkedIn part of it, you're not getting what you want because of it's just not there yet. And that's the one thing that everybody needs to realize, that's where we're at this point in time. It's still too new. It's changing day in and day out. What you knew yesterday is gone now. Moved on to the next thing. So that's the one part. Before we get down to the end, I would like to open the floor to you and share anything you would like before we close this out, unless you have, and share some good ideas and some insight, and then we'll close it out. What do you think?
Sure.
Okay.
Oh man, that's a broad question. Where do I start?
Yep.
So
it's all on your shoulders now.
Right? I think, in continuing with that theme, I was actually just having a conversation with the VP of a very big restaurant chain in Cincinnati and Kentucky and in some local states. And I sent him our rubric for how we evaluate talent, and we build all of this objectivity into the process. But then there's the customization aspects, the nuances, what you're listening for, how you follow up, and that's what changes role to role. And so I was talking him through that process, and he was listening to my thought process. And as I'm saying it out loud, it really is very complex. It's not something that can be streamlined, but you can't rush it. It still has to be very intentional. It has to be very intentional, very strategic, and you have to practice these skills. So those are things that I've said this for years now, right, with ATS systems. You cannot rely on a computer to do a human's job when it comes to evaluating people, because people don't fit in a box. Right. They are very nuanced. People, if someone looked at my resume and was looking at me through the lens of a computer, I would have never gotten hired for the role that I did that opened up my career. And I know that I was one of the best hires they made. They told me, but that's those unconventional prototypes are sometimes your best hires. So you can't delegate that piece to a computer. You have to be really intentional and smart about, thinking outside the box. Who is this human as a whole person? How can they maybe function within an organization that I'm not seeing, and read between the lines? And you do that through great partners, like, great recruiters that get that, or internal team members that can help build that process out. So there's still so much that's going to rely on us to be more intentional and strategic with how we manage that process, even though it's tempting to give it to the clunky AI intern. Please don't do that.
Right. For sure. That is very important that, still to this day, recruiting, again, I'll say recruiting and staffing is so hands-on, has to be very personable because you want to get the nuances. You want to get, what are they truly wanting to do? And I've had to myself say, I'm sorry, you're just not going to get this role. You're just not, it's not for you, but we will continue to work together. We will focus on your wants, your desires, and what the business wants so that we connect the right person with the right job because I'm wasting your time if I don't get you into the right role because you're going to be unhappy there. You're going to do things that you don't want to do, and then you're going to just start looking somewhere else, and you're going to say you're going to hate me.
Yeah.
And that's at the end of the day, it's a lose-lose for everybody. It's a lose for me, it's a lose for the company, and then you're unhappy because I just threw you into a role. And, that's the one thing that we have to realize in this business. Our job isn't to throw someone in a role, it's to place somebody like the person you had placed and were there for 6 years. That's, a very positive thing to hear that, we listen to the people, we use the tools, like you said, our ears and keep our mouth shut for a minute and do what we need to do. So, everything you said is very true. And I'm thank you for taking the time out of your day and spend with us and talk about the most important things about hiring and letting everybody understand how this is to be done and how that, don't rely on AI. Now, if you're searching for things, do the tech part of it. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure.
But at the end of the day, you have to know what the hiring managers need. You need to know the culture of the business. You want to see where they're growing to, and so forth. And those are the type of things that we all need to be aware of and work with good people and good companies like yours that will help them and educate them as well. So, again,
thank you for bringing a platform to this. Not everyone thinks like you do or I do.
Well,
so.
Yeah. And that's why when I came across your website, PEOPLEfirst.com, it's, and I read through it, I always like to do a little research beforehand, and I really saw what we just talked about, and that's what I wanted to bring to the forefront and put this out there for people to hear and understand that these hiring managers that I've spoken to and these different people that I talk to that are doing consulting, that this information is very valuable to them as well. I've talked to consultants that work with CEOs and heads of companies, and this is the same thing, for them, for what they need. So, it's valuable across the boards. So thank you for your time today. I appreciate it. Again, PEOPLEfirst.com. And thank you, Alex. Go to the website. It has a lot of great information, a lot of tools to help. And like Alex said earlier, she does consulting. They do consulting as well to help you through the process. Or like she said as well, if you're a college student and need help with your resume writing and everything, that tool's on there as well. So all of those things are in the website. Take advantage of it. Make sure that you reach out to someone to help you, especially in this job market that is so difficult. And if you're thinking, like Alex said earlier, again, if you don't think you have the tools to or the background to do the job, you never know. It might be the right culture that may work, just like Alex had the opportunity to do and get the job that she got and just took advantage of every opportunity there forward. And that's what it's about nowadays. So, well, Alex, thank you for your time today. And thank you for the podcast. And we're done.